Tell us a little bit about what you saw and being able to relay that message to Cora when you watched Kimbrel pitch and kind of help out so he wasn't tipping his pitches.
So tipping pitches, we hear about it all the time.
People at home understand what tipping pitches is all about.
It's amazing. And
That's remarkable.
Alex, I have a story for you. Start out this here podcast.
Hello, Bobby. What's your story? Regale me.
That was kind of like a smooth 102.9 jazz voice that you hit me with right there. Hello, Bobby.
Hello, Bobby. You're listening to Tipping Pitches.
Why don't we have you record something like that for the intro? I think that would actually be funny and good.
Or we could do the. Oh, I kind of forgot how to do this.
All right, I'm going to tell you my story. My story is I went to fire up MLB TV. I don't know how you watch MLB TV, but I previously watched it through my PlayStation 4. I do not have a PlayStation.
Boy.
I do not have a PlayStation 5. I'm not built for the gaming life like you are. I know that you're a real gamer here.
Yeah, for sure.
And I went to go open the app, and you know what it told me? Can you guess what it told me?
Either that you're blacked out or that you need to renew your subscription. I don't know.
No, I did renew my subscription.
Oh, okay.
I told you that I renewed my subscription and I put it on the tipping.
Oh, that's
card.
you did. Yes.
At our various business meetings over the last 6 weeks, we've just been having business meetings every night.
Yeah.
No, my subscription is up to date. Good to go on that. I wasn't blacked out. I hadn't even gotten to the games yet. It told me the app no longer is functioning. The app is no longer supported.
Wow.
On PlayStation 4. Now, the reason that I even watch on my PlayStation 4, as opposed to watching just through my television, through an app on my television, is that MLB TV did not think it was necessary to have an app on Samsung TVs.
Yeah.
For some reason. You know, Samsung. How many Samsungs do you think are in America? How many Samsung TVs in America? 30 million Samsung smart TVs registered in the US and 73 million globally. Not enough. MLB TV said not enough. So the reason that I even was using the PS4 app to begin with was because there was no other option for me. So then I opened the PS4 app, and so I was like, I guess I'm just not watching baseball this year. Certainly not going to pay the $29.99 for a Roku or whatever that everybody at home right now is like screaming, just do it, get it on Roku.
Myself included.
Just get it on Apple TV. Nope. So I was like, okay, they sunsetted it. They sunsetted it on PS4. Just like Joe Biden. They sunsetted it. And I had to get that joke in there. So I was like, okay, just maybe this one time, they're going to follow logic here. And because they're getting rid of the old app on the PS4, maybe they will have also added an app option on Samsung TV.
You actually thought that?
So I was like doing some deep breathing exercises. Box breathing. You aware of the concept of box breathing? 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 second out, 4 second pause, 4 4 4 4 box square.
Cool. All right, great.
You should try it.
All right.
It works really well. Trying to lower my heart rate, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I opened up the Samsung App Store, which is a disaster, by the way, a total nightmare. I searched for it. Sure enough, it was there, and it works.
Wow.
They fucking did it. 2024, the
Look
year of
at
hope. Rob Manfred heard our cries into the wilderness, and he called back and he said, sirs, I have a solution
He's
for you.
looking out for the common man, you know? The little Samsung users out there.
All 30 million of us
That's
in the
right.
United States, and all 73 million of us globally.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't think that you can get MLB TV globally.
I don't know. I don't live globally.
How you doing?
Doing good. It's been a hot sec.
It has been a hot sec. You're still wearing your Enron Field hat, so
still-
some things change, some things stay the same.
Exactly. I mean, I felt like it's been a little while since I've worn it, but if there's an occasion to kind of get me back in the right headspace, this is the one.
Talk to me about your sort of like off season. You know, we just took 6 weeks off. Are you in the best shape of your life? What would you say? Did you add 15 pounds of muscle?
I added 15 pounds of something.
Have you been doing practice pods
Yes,
at home?
I've been doing it in the mirror.
in the mirror? Have you ever tried to like talk in the mirror for like longer than 30 seconds? Like if you just happen to have a mirror near you and you're having a conversation with someone, if you try to watch yourself talk in the mirror, it's like it really breaks your brain a little bit.
Yeah, I prefer talking to myself when there's not a mirror around because I look far less stupid that way, I will say.
You don't look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and give yourself like affirmations like I am enough. I am Alex. I am smart. I am witty. Today's going to be a good day. You don't do that?
No, I go the other direction. What's the opposite of affirmations? Like
insults?
Negs?
Negs.
You're like, all right, bud. You really think you can do this today? Let's see. Let's find out.
You're like the sports talk radio host for your own life.
Uh-huh. I don't really know if he's got that.
He's
dog
not
in
built
him.
for the moment.
I don't know if he is, but we're gonna see. It's all gonna show up on the court.
So practice pods. You laid a couple tracks down.
Did you
go back and watch it like film?
Mm-hmm.
You know, not enough lift on my swing here.
Yeah.
Not enough punch to the end of this bit.
No, I just pivoted.
NFTs.
I shipped NFTs to crypto.
Okay.
I just started investing.
By the way, is crypto kind of back? Bitcoin is way up. Secretly, everybody's dunking on it when it was down. Look at it. It's back.
Yeah, I don't dude, I don't know.
Last year, today's the band topics, by the way. Hi everybody. Last year on the band topics episode, we started it out with a 25-minute conversation about Silicon Valley Bank going bankrupt.
Oh, wow.
There was like an old-fashioned
that was
run on the bank.
A year ago?
Unfortunately, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. But also, doesn't it kind of feel like it was like 6 weeks ago?
Yes. Yeah. What's so cool about crypto is because there's nothing behind it, is like when it's back, it's just because everyone's like, it's back.
Yeah.
And then when it's doing poorly, it's because everyone's like, I think it's doing poorly right now. Like it is actually
it's like
maybe
your affirmations to yourself in the mirror.
I mean,
that's basically like the underlying philosophy of crypto. It's just affirmations.
It's maybe the most properly valued asset in the world right now.
Okay.
Because like the value of it is whatever everyone's saying. So I don't know.
So you're saying you believe in
the
free market.
on
That's
crypto.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Free market pivot would be really fun for you. I think this podcast needs a little more attention. I think that's what it was missing. I think that's what we discovered over the last 6 weeks. So we've been working sort of on our point counterpoint energy.
Yeah.
Our crossfire energy. And our first take energy, if you will. And we're going to try it out today.
Well, yeah, my pivot towards sports betting is really going to catch you off guard then. Because all I want to do is talk about MLB futures and betting spreads.
Can you imagine if we just decided to do like a season preview, but it was all about betting? Took 6 weeks off, far right pivot, bang.
Yeah, and said, we got the insights, we got the data. This is data-driven analysis that we're doing right here. We've set up our AI modeling systems.
What do they call those people? They call them sharks. Sharks. We're the sharks.
Sharks, sure.
Nope. You can't change our name to have shark in the title. Tipping sharks? Sharking pitches? Poll in the description. Which do you prefer?
Sharks are reserved for individuals like Alex Rodriguez who go on TV and sit there and have ideas pitched at them.
You know,
like
I don't think it's shark. I think it's sharp that I'm thinking of. The sharps. Sharp betters.
Okay.
Yeah. I did produce an entire season about gambling. And I forgot
and
that
it
already.
shows.
Entire podcast season about gambling. Good season. You should go check that out. Gambler season 2, part of the Ringer Podcast Network. That was like 2 years ago, but you can find it.
Okay.
Your podcast app of choice. No free ads though. Gonna bleep all that. Right. No free ads for things that I worked on. Banned topics. We also have a lot of topics that are not banned, and some might argue are very important things that we've just missed over the last 6 weeks. Very important. Very important. A lot of people
really
being like
banner time of year for us to take on.
Unbelievable. Before we get into all of that, before we get into the mutiny at the Major League Baseball Players Association, before we get into the betting scandal that could take down the game's greatest player, that's not an exaggeration. Before we do some banned topics for the calendar year 2024, I am Bobby Wagner.
I am Alex Basin.
And you are listening to Tipping Pitches. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to take a quick moment just to say thanks to everybody for hanging out, being patient, waiting, listening to the rebroadcasts that we put on the feed for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Obviously, we put out a statement on Twitter, but if you are mercifully not on Twitter, or if you are not a patron, or if you happened to miss the short statement that we put in the podcast feed about a month and a half ago, we just decided to take a break. We've been doing the show for 6.5 years, basically with no sustained break, even when I moved across the country, or even when I moved back across the country. We basically had episodes filling in all of those weeks. And we thought it just might be a nice time to recharge the batteries, rethink about what we wanted to be discussing on the podcast, and really get our feet back on the ground heading into the 2024 season, which, as people might have noticed over the last 6 weeks, is going to be full of topics that we want to cover.
Right. We figured might as well take a break right as everyone is locking, like right when NFL season over, you know.
Right when you're seeing a lot of those, like, it's baseball season now tweets.
Exactly.
Like, we got to get away.
We were like, I need some space. We didn't, no reactionary takes here. You know, we said we see some stuff coming down the pipeline. What we're going to do is step away so we can come back with some clear heads.
Yeah.
Rather than just reacting to whatever's going on.
We are pivoting away from the 24-hour news cycle.
Yes.
We're more like on the 24-day news cycle. Like, something happens and about 3.5 weeks later, we're like, we're going to talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. That's the policing way of doing things. You know, it's like something happens, you show up 3 or 4 days later and say, hey, I heard something happened.
And that brings us to our first missed topic from the last month and a half, Kathy Hochul inviting the National Guard into the subway. Would you like to weigh in on that?
Yes.
As a National Guard member yourself.
As a member. I'm a card-carrying member.
What would you like to say? Have you had your bag searched yet? I know you commute both ways each day.
I do commute every day.
You were nodding. I thought you did have your bag searched.
No, I haven't get really excited yet.
You know, if you had your bag searched by the National Guard and hadn't told me yet, I'd be upset.
That's reasonable. No, they would have to look up from their phones to actually see me walking by.
Are the National Guard's guys on their phone too?
I actually, to be quite honest, have not seen a National Guard guy yet.
I did at West 4th.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you give him a salute?
I No, I actually went down on one knee in front of him. And I said, "Sir, I'm expressing my First Amendment right to protest."
Oh, I thought you were praying to him. You were like thanking God. You were doing the Tebow in front of him.
You know, one thing that we didn't talk about enough during the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, if we could go back to that for a second, is
on our baseball podcast that's been off for 6 weeks.
The fine line between Kaepernick and Tebow, you know, because Tebow prayed. So everyone was like, okay, cool, for God. But Kaepernick was doing, I guess, because Tebow wasn't doing it during the national anthem. What if he did do it during the national anthem, but he was like, I'm praying? Do you think it would have been a controversy?
No, people would have been like, that's the most patriotic fucking thing I've ever seen.
We actually have a guest for today. His name's Jason Whitlock. Jason, you ready? He's in the green room, hanging out. Should we talk about... I don't even know how to talk about this. Should we talk about the gigantic betting scandal with Shohei Ohtani and his translator, Ipe Misuhara?
I guess.
Where to begin?
I don't even know how. We can't even establish the facts of this yet, right? Like, we can't even really lay out a reasonable timeline. The story is still evolving. The broad strokes of it being that Ipe Misuhara, Shohei Ohtani's longtime translator and close friend, was initially revealed to have maybe been stealing millions of dollars from Shohei Ohtani to place bets on undisclosed sports. And then the story quickly evolved to say maybe Ohtani was actually helping him cover his own debts. There's MLB dropped a news of an investigation into Ohtani at 6 p.m. on a Friday night.
No, now you have to be accurate. It was 5:56 p.m.
Okay, that's fair.
That's fair. Give him some slack.
We were still on mine then.
We might have taken 6 weeks off, but we are committed to journalism.
That's right, we are.
Accuracy, integrity.
There's no, like, and I was saying this before we started recording, like, it's not like we can necessarily have a take about this, because, like, we don't.
Maybe you can.
Well, yeah, I know you can. I know you can. My take is mostly like kind of like, that didn't take long, huh?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people sharing a similar take. So a couple more details for people before we start discussing it. This story broke what feels like weeks ago. I think it was only 4 days ago. I believe it was March 20th. We're sitting here recording this on Sunday, March 24th. It was the day after the opening day, in parentheses, the beginning of the Korea series. It was
which you don't acknowledge.
I don't acknowledge it. I mean, I acknowledge it in that these teams played. It seemed cool. I followed the highlights. That Machado homer seemed fun. You know who's good? Mookie Betts.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I saw the box scores were ridiculous for this game. A lot of Mets fans taking a victory lap on Yamamoto already. I'm like, you guys need to fucking slow your roll.
Right.
You guys need to slow your roll. The story broke between games, basically. Like in Eastern time, the evening after they had played that first morning. So it was like they had to go play the second game with all of the press there asking Ohtani questions. And the story was that there was a $4.5 million gambling debt. That was the number that kept floating around. And that was how much money was transferred from Ohtani's bank to a bookmaking operation that was under federal investigation for illegally gambling on sports. One thing that was weird about this, which I don't know how much we can really talk about or like have much to say about, was that we're doing $4.5 million of illegal gambling in California, a state where gambling is legalized. So the whole idea that we've like cleaned this world up by
Is it legal in Cal?
I think so.
I thought Gavin Newsom was holding it down for us out there, holding the line.
Oh, I was wrong. California remains the most populous state yet to legalize any form of sports betting. Okay, never mind.
Makes a little more sense now. I'm like,
I
okay,
guess, but also like 81
it.
games a year on the road.
Right.
You can place those bets on the weekends.
Yes,
you know,
you can.
place those bets on the flight. If you're flying, can you place those bets?
That's
international waters.
International waters. You can place bets on anything up there, man.
I don't want to know what international waters actually means in a legal sense. I prefer to keep it lodged in my head as like a place where you can do anything and not be accountable to anyone.
I mean, that is kind of largely what it is.
Based on what? You passing the bar exam in the last 6 weeks? Like, what do you know that I don't know?
Wow.
Told
Came
you.
out with fire.
Confrontational.
Said we want more tension.
$4.5 million. That was the debt. That was what was alleged to have moved from Ohtani's bank account to this bookmaking operation. I don't remember this guy's name. Doesn't really matter. The story came out initially that Ohtani had lent the money to Mizuhara to cover his gambling debt. And then it was very quickly backtracked. This came out through a spokesperson, which we later found out was a crisis PR person for the Ohtani camp, representing that they had hired like within the last few days before this. The story was then recanted to be revised to say, actually, Ohtani only gave him $500,000 willingly, and the other $4 million was stolen. I believe they kept like referring to it as like an egregious theft or something like that. It was like really powerful language. Curious that the story was changed. Generally, when I think of crisis PR, I think of them being able to handle the PR, not make it worse.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But what do I know about crisis PR? Not a lot. Not a lot. I know that people make a lot of money doing it. We're in a banner month for PR, by the way, between the Royals, Ohtani, MLB in general. Like a day or two later, Ipe came out and fell on the sword, for lack of a better phrase. He confirmed the second version of the story, which was that he went to Ohtani and asked for help for the $500,000, and then I don't think he commented on the theft part of it, because that is like the active criminal investigation. A lot of reporters being like, we asked which agency is covering this, and none of them have said yes. So that's good. It's not the FBI. It's not the local authorities in California. I believe they asked the DOJ, like the district attorney for Los Angeles, who would be covering this crime, and they had no comment. So I guess most likely is them. It's most likely DOJ. But alas, a lot of really weird, really obscured elements of this story, which is why you said it's very hard for us to have a take. It's very hard for us to have like a nuanced, thoughtful conversation about this. All of that being said, all of the conspiracy theories flying about this And I would say the main conspiracy theory that took hold was that Ohtani has a betting problem, and his good friend, by the way, these guys are like, they call themselves brothers before all of this. And as recently as like the day before this, they were interacting like nothing was different. A lot of people conspiratorializing that Ohtani is the one with the betting problem. Ippei took the fall for it because Ohtani is such a big star. I think that's reckless to throw that conspiracy theory out with any kind of platform. Obviously, people don't think of Twitter as a place with a platform that they need to like control their conspiracy theories. But acknowledging all of that as background for this, what do you actually think happened? Because I feel like in my mind, I have an idea of what I think is the most likely, but I wouldn't put anything more than like 25% confidence on any of these options.
Okay. It's not interesting to say like I genuinely don't know, but like could Ohtani be gambling? Like, sure. I'm not discounting that idea.
I did forget to mention that the story so far from all parties has been that none of the gambling was on baseball.
Right.
Still, they have maintained that.
Right.
The MLB investigation has not uncovered anything because they didn't announce it until 2 days ago at 6 p.m.
Right, of course. Which is what you generally do when
you don't want people to know about what you're looking into.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, you say you have a pet theory. I kind of want to hear what it is.
I believe that the debt was accumulated by Ippei.
Okay.
I believe that Ohtani did give him the money. I believe that they were going to tell the truth about that, which is why that story came out initially. And then they realized that they were admitting to a federal crime.
Right. Because
by saying that story. Because
you're
still
helping collect for a bookie at that point. Collect a debt.
Yes.
For an illegal bookie.
Exactly. And you can't be seen as admitting to a crime in the press.
No.
That's just not, it's not sound legal defense.
It is not good legal
defense. So I think that they backtracked it. But even then, so then are they lying about what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Because that, I don't know if you know this, having just passed the bar, that's also a crime.
Right.
If they get indicted about this and then they don't tell the truth about it, that's perjury. So that's why I say I don't have more than 25% confidence on any of this. The other element is that many people have noted that it would be hard to have a $4.5 million line of credit with a bookie on a $300,000 salary. Not a lot of bookies make a lot of money by giving people $4.5 million worth of credit when they know that it would take them 10 years to make that money back on their salary if they never spent a dime of it. I find that curious. This is why there's an investigation.
Yeah. It does help if you can say, no, I have a friend who's covering me who makes tens of millions of dollars a year.
All the people who are like, wouldn't you defer your salary if you had a huge gambling problem too? I'm like, stop. It's not like this man doesn't have money that he could gamble still.
How that
he
works.
Deferred the salary because he makes so much money elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
he can bet all that money on baseball when he does eventually retire.
I will say I agree that it did not take long to have a gigantic scandal. This scandal could have happened before the league got into bed with the sports books, with the public sports books. But where I do sympathize with that sentiment is that the league just has no firm ground to stand on when it takes a stance now because of everything that they've done to normalize problem gambling.
Yeah.
And this is not the same as like a minor league player throwing a game because somebody who was placing money on sports betting legally through a sports book had a lot to lose. But it is all part of the same moral degradation that the league has opted into for financial gain. And so no matter what they conclude, I gotta be honest, I'm not gonna believe it. And neither are a lot of fans because they have a lot of parties to protect now. They have Shohei Ohtani, the biggest star in the entire world, the biggest baseball star in the entire world to protect. If you want to take a cynical view on all of this, of course, which why wouldn't you? It's Major League Baseball. And they have all of their financial betting partners to protect. Not to mention all of the people who broadcast their games who are also in bed with the sports books with separate agreements, you know? And by the way, a lot of the people covering this also have deals with sports books and have a financial incentive, if not a moral incentive, or if not a logical incentive, to not make not make the concept of sports betting look like the problem here.
Yeah.
When it is.
Pretty funny. I was scrolling I'm sorry. I was scrolling the New York Post the other day.
Okay.
Just kind of, I don't know. It's just seeing like what's
this is another habit that you picked up in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I like to look on the other side of the aisle, do a little Oppo research.
So then you went to the New York Times after that.
Exactly. And it was pretty funny because
it's fun to be on the opposite side of the aisle from everyone.
Yes, it is.
We don't have an aisle. We're like up in the rafters.
The like betting story is immediately followed by like a story that's like Dodgers Padres betting lines.
Yep.
Here are best bets for the opening weekend series.
Yeah.
Like it's like, yes, the ability to gamble illegally on sports existed long before MLB got into bed with FanDuel and DraftKings and all of the above. But it also was not like plastered all over everything that Major League Baseball did, right? It was not something that was impossible to ignore if you were consuming any given sport. And so when you're talking about something that is like quite literally addictive, well, sure, you can go and 20 years ago, you can go and place your bets on sports if you want, but you're walking a much finer line there in terms of potentially being looked into for what you're doing. But you're also just like not being encouraged at every turn to do these sorts of things. And again, I'm not going to make any sort of speculation on Ohtani's connection.
Like who the person was.
Who the person was.
The problem gambling originated from. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I more just am of the belief that like there's no way that these things are only going to be marketed at fans. Like the players are also human beings who are going to be exposed to this to some level. And when you make large sums of money, you may be convinced that everyone else is doing it. Why should you not do it as well?
I think you get yourself into really tricky territory when you start trying to monetize people's addictions to things, whether those addictions are drinking, whether those addictions are sports in general, whether those addictions are sports betting. Like, it's bad enough that fandom makes you this crazy without the other vices that it could lead to, honestly. And this is a story that is clearly starting to corrode. I hate, it sounds really douchey to say it this way, but it's starting to corrode the social contract of sports, where we all agree that this thing is ridiculous and silly. It's nonsense. It makes a lot of money because it's entertainment, but it doesn't make money because it's money driven, Like, it doesn't make it's not like you wouldn't treat you shouldn't treat the Mets losing to the Phillies the way that you would treat if your 401k bankrupted itself. But now people have to, because they're addicted to sports gambling. Or people don't have to, but now people are. And it's notable that in other leagues, it's starting to become the type of thing where people are speaking out against it. A handful of people in the NBA, a couple players and some coaches have recently been saying, it's all people say to me in the stands. It's all people tweet at me. You fucked up my parlay. You ruined my bet. I lost $500 betting on you. Go kill yourself. Like, that was the single most predictable element of all of this. All of the individual scandals, any game fixing, any bribery, any illegal incurred debt for a player's translator, all of that stuff is sort of hard to predict acute instances like that. But more broadly speaking, this element of toxicity around gambling, there is not a single person using their brain who would not have been able to see that this was going to come. And we have obviously talked about it on the podcast. Plenty of people have been writing about this, talking about this, warning about this. A lot of international fans have been warning about this, where sports betting has already become a problem in their countries. And I have to say, like, never forget that the league did this intentionally. Like, they chose to do this. They said that money is more important than the health and safety of their community. That's like what they do with everything, obviously. But it's so much more glaring because this is something where it's like they're not obfuscating it behind like asking for money as part of a city budget and taking money from where we could reallocate resources to help people who don't have homes, or like people who are struggling, like public education systems that are struggling. Like they're straight up just taking the money directly from the fans now and like bankrupting their fans.
Yeah.
And they're like, cool, this is what we wanted.
They're like, but you could win it back on the next one. Just one more parlay. Just one more parlay, bro.
Let's move on to the other, just frankly, gigantic piece of news from the last few weeks, which is more in our particular wheelhouse, and I think was the thing that was having more people ask us to come back in the last couple weeks, and that is what is being described, and I sort of said it in a tongue-in-cheek way, as a mutiny at the Major League Baseball Players Association. I honestly don't feel comfortable throwing that term around. I'm not in that union. I haven't observed what's going on. I'm not on the Zoom calls. I'm not a reporter. I feel like I have even less of a idea of where I want to start with this, because this story is even more confusing to me than the Ohtani Ippei betting thing. For those of you who have not followed along with this story, essentially what happened about a week ago, or a week and change ago, is some rumors started trickling out. Some reporters started tweeting. Some articles started to be written about the fact that there was unrest within the Major League Baseball Players Association, the union for players, major and minor, in professional baseball. And that unrest was centered around the presence of Bruce Meyer, the lead negotiator. I believe he is the deputy executive director is his title, and he was the negotiator for the last collective bargaining agreement. It seemed like players just didn't like him, don't want him around anymore. Some people were theorizing, or there were some insinuations in many of the stories, that was because he is somewhere on a spectrum of favorable to controlled by Scott Boras, who is the most powerful agent in maybe all of professional sports, but certainly within baseball. He represents a lot of the top players as his clients in Major League Baseball. He negotiates the biggest contracts most often, and he has a very defined philosophy on how free agency should look like for the game's top stars. And honestly, not a lot of players fit into that philosophy. Though he represents many players and a lot of the top stars, he doesn't represent the majority of players. The other agents, the other very powerful agents who have a lot of sway in this industry, represent more in totality than him. So there is a lot of pro and anti-Boras sentiment that is, I would say, swirling around for those people who want to pay attention to that sort of thing. We've talked about it on the podcast before. I would say that element of all of this was the most confusing to me, the Boras element of it, because no one has actually confirmed that was what was underlying a lot of these things. But the reason that it kind of came out, or at least the supposed reason that it kind of came out now, was because this has been a bad offseason for free agents. Not a lot of money is being spent. A lot of the top guys either got signed at the last minute or are still not signed. Jordan Montgomery's still not signed to this point. Blake Snell signed 5 days before the season started, whatever. And Blake Snell, by the way, reigning NL Cy Young.
That's not canon.
He
in
did
my book.
win the NL Cy Young last year, just so you know, just so you're aware. That's his second Cy Young. Second Cy Young. 2 Cy Youngs for that guy.
But
same amount of Cy Youngs as Jacob deGrom.
True, but on the
one
other hand,
more
it's
Cy Young than
Blake
Garrett
Snell.
Cole. Should I keep going? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous that the guy has 2 Cy Youngs. And he kind of deserved both of them. Weird. Anyway, a lot of kind of just like negativity swirling around that was not there a year ago at this time. And it appears that some players are not happy with the way some of the things within the current CBA, the most recently negotiated CBA, are playing out, number one. Number two, the management of the union more broadly, the way the allocation of power, the allocation of spending, the transparency, the communication. And so, enter Harry Marino, who has been on this podcast.
I've heard of him.
Who was I don't know what his title was, but he was the leader of Advocates for Minor Leaguers, which eventually was folded into the Major League Baseball Players Association and largely thought of as the place that organized the minor league players into a union to push for their union drive for recognition and negotiation. Marino became part of the MLBPA on their executive side. Former minor league player, has a lot of good relationships with a lot of the younger guys, minor league players, et cetera, et cetera. He was involved in the negotiation of the minor league CBA along with Meyer, who, as the lead negotiator, in his capacity as lead negotiator, negotiated that contract as well. But Marino had more of an input on that than maybe anyone else did at the major league level because he organized this group of players. A lot of dynamics here at play, by the way. A lot of like intra-union dynamics going on here. And the way that this story was framed, I don't know how much of this is true, honestly, having not been a part of this, but it seems like people had relayed how public or semi-public Zoom meetings went. These are private Zoom meetings within the union, but like when you have that many people there, it's like it's not really like private closed door meetings. It seemed like Marino and a group of players backing him made an attempt to request that Tony Clark get rid of Bruce Meyer, fire him. They don't want him involved in the union anymore for whatever reason, unconfirmed. Don't want to speculate any further than what I've already said about Boris. Meyer has said that he never met Boris before he started working for the MLBPA. He also said that he came out of essentially like not retirement, but he came out of a different job that was unrelated to sports to take this job because he felt passionately about it and he was asked to do it and they wanted his help in negotiating this and they wanted his experience. He's a very experienced guy, by the way. He's worked for all 4 major sports unions at this point, and he's worked in union collective bargaining more broadly for a long time. I feel like that's a lot of details, and weirdly, I feel like I haven't explained anything that really went on because it's unresolved. They've made a push to get rid of Meyer. They've had more meetings since then to talk about why they want to get rid of Meyer. Tony Clark has defended him and said that he doesn't want to get rid of him and he would prefer to keep him around. And thus, the only way to get rid of Meyer would be to get rid of both of them. So they would have to make a motion to vote on the ouster of Tony Clark to then be replaced by somebody. Obviously, if it's a group of players voting against Tony Clark to remove him in favor of Harry Marino, the obvious next guy to step into that role would be Harry Marino. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with that sort of speculation. Again, I just feel like I gave so many details and have not clarified any of really what happened. So all of that being said, Alex, we haven't talked about this really beyond just being like, yo, this is crazy. What do you make of this? Like, what is your read on what is going on right now? And I guess, moreover, for the purposes of this podcast, what is animating this? Why is this happening now? 1 year removed from the implementation of a CBA that seemingly like 3 months ago everybody was really pumped about.
It was like, all right, this will do.
This is working, yeah.
Yeah. Is it perfect? No CBA ever is.
But I have some more thoughts on that, but I'm going to hear what you have to say about all this.
I mean, to a certain extent, like these conversations, like it's good that these conversations are happening, right? You have a new generation of baseball players who are maybe approaching labor within the game differently than the generation before them or the generation before them. The last few years have seen, I think, increasing animosity towards management and towards the skewed economics of the game, which is a net good thing. I think having players who are more willing to go to the mat for themselves and their fellow players is good. And obviously, Marino was really instrumental in organizing the group of people who make up a majority of professional baseball players, right? So it stands to reason, I think, that maybe some of his more, I don't want to say militant ideas, but I
think it's okay.
But I think to an extent it is like saying, hey, we're not pushing hard enough. And so I think it stands to reason that he would have a faction of players who feel the same way. And I think it's healthy, ultimately, for a union to be having these conversations, especially one that has historically been so powerful and has maybe had that power chipped away over the last 2 decades or so. I think it's interesting how much of this is taking place in the public eye, and just how much confusion it's leading to? Like it's really hard to put a finger on what the animating philosophy is behind this beyond we still feel like we're kind of getting shafted, which, like, I don't know, is enough of an animating philosophy for me to justify like wanting to make some changes. Is the ouster of Meyer or Clark alone the thing that is going to push them in that direction? I don't know. Meyer's clearly very experienced.
Yeah. That's a really interesting question, by the way. Like, is getting rid of the head of your union actually, if your union is having a problem with lowercase c conservative thinking,
yeah,
is getting rid of the person who has been running the union, or the two people, whatever, who have been running the union, who have maybe been trying their best. Like, I think that you and I think that Tony Clark is doing an okay job in a tough spot.
Yeah.
That is our like general consensus on him since he became the executive director of the PA before we even started this podcast. I don't know much about Bruce Meyer other than, again, he's a negotiator. I think this word carries an interesting connotation in the labor world and in the world more broadly, but he's a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
He's been around a lot. He has a lot of ingrained wisdom about how things are supposed to work. And I think that we forget sometimes that unions shouldn't care about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we also forget, because we actually don't have any models for democracy in our society, we forget that democracy sometimes looks like this. Sometimes looks like open conversation. Sometimes looks like asking questions, interrogating about whether we're doing things the right way. And, you know, to a lot of their credit, I think a lot of the players who have been asked about this, there was a Q&A with Lance McCullers, there was a Q&A with former union agitator grunt Colin McHugh, and a lot of what you've heard is we're having open conversations where I think this is good. I think this is healthy, much like you said.
Yeah. I mean, as to your point of like, what is the root cause of this? Like, I don't know. It's I think you could probably ask a bunch of different players and get a bunch of different responses, right? There's been
yes.
like
I think a lot of players are like, yo, this is crazy. Like, they see the tweets from Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal as well.
Obviously you mentioned the sort of cold stove this offseason, the lack of sort of high-end free agent signings outside of the obvious, right? You know, the negotiations around the competitive balance tax and tanking have not been perfect. They have not come to a perfect solution on that. I think some players are still unhappy about arbitration. There was the case with JD Davis this offseason,
yes,
where like the Giants went to arbitration with him, came to an agreement, then basically said
went to arbitration, lost, didn't
right.
come to an agreement. They lost the arbitration case fully.
Yes, they lost, but the agreement was come to that like
they would pay.
You should pay
$6 million.
Yes,
or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, reneged on that and said
they cut him.
Yeah, exactly. And he ended up losing like I think roughly like $2 million on the whole deal.
Yes, the Giants were required to pay him, I think, $1.1 million, and then
he
ended up signing with the A's
with your boys.
$3 million.
Yeah.
That's where like veterans who are competent enough to stay on a major league field but not good enough to be on contenders go to play out their careers.
So it's like, there's all these different threads.
I gotta be honest though, it'd be like kind of fun for you to watch him. He's got pop. Yeah, he's got
Bro,
pop.
I've kind of low-key loved JD Davis for like 3 years now.
I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player.
He's always been one of those guys where I'm like, he just needs 500 at-bats. Just give him 500 at-bats, bro.
It's so weird that the thing that pushed JD Davis out of San Francisco and the reason he was cut was Matt Chapman, who obviously started with the A's and then...
Oh, really?
I mean, sometimes I don't know if you remember that because it's so long ago and your mind is clouded with so much bureaucracy.
Genuinely.
Here's a dynamic that I want to talk about more broadly. Also, before I say this, I will preface this by saying we obviously know people who are involved in the Major League Baseball Players Association. Some of them have been on this podcast. None of what we're talking about here is informed by any of that because, again, like you said, a lot of people don't really know what's going on, ourselves included. We're not reporting on any of this. This is just like my read, and I'm honestly a little bit reticent to even act like I know anything about this situation because I would be really annoyed if this was my union and people were talking about it in public. In fact, I will say something similar kind of happened with the Writers Guild a couple of years ago, where there was like a group of people who had been involved for a really long time and felt that the union should be run a certain way. A group of people who had come in more recently, a larger body of people who had come in with more ideas about what the guild should be prioritizing. And that's where I want to talk about this dynamic of the idea of organizers versus bureaucrats, or organizers versus negotiators. I also think, by the way, I think bureaucrat does not actually carry that negative of a connotation in the world of labor. I think like you need bureaucrats, you need people to be doing a lot of this grunt work, you need people who have been around and who carry a lot of expertise and just like a legacy of experience. And that is really important to organizing. It's not the only thing though, because Harry Marino is an organizer. To your point, like these ideas, in contrast with how the MLBPA has been run for the last 3 decades, do seem militant. Bringing in the minor leaguers was a militant idea. There's a reason it didn't happen until 2 years ago. It's because of, like I said, the lowercase c conservative thinking that I will say that a lot of unions in high earning fields exhibit. And when you put that in contrast with, and I gotta say, I really don't feel like Tony Clark fits into that. I feel like this more talking about Bruce Meyer, the idea of the players feeling one way about Marino and feeling another way about Meyer. When you contrast that with someone who is just like a lawyer, tried and true, who is like the opposite side of the coin of Rob Manfred, basically. And this is not to say that Meyer did not do very well in negotiations. It's not to say that he doesn't have the union as the top priority. But it's really hard to come into a union and be a negotiator and to make everybody feel like you prioritized what they wanted from the CBA. And so a dynamic emerges where, especially when these two guys had to work together, by the way, on the minor league CBA, Marino and the rest of the advocates for minor leaguers crew come in. They're absorbed into the MLBPA. They get all of those resources. They get all of the protection that comes along with an already established union that negotiates with MLBPA. But you and I, we talked about this at the time. They also have to then contend with all of the well-worn like ruts, the well-eroded pathways for how these things should operate. Because it's very easy to just fall into the same dynamic that like negotiating in a Major League Baseball CBA might feel like, we give a little, you give a little, we take a little, you take a little, we improve incrementally on the last CBA from 5 years ago or whatever, and we move on. There's a little animosity, but we're not here to blow up the system. You could argue that the minor leaguers should have been there to blow up the system. They didn't. I don't know anything more about that, but I'm sure people felt a way about that. And I'm sure that major leaguers who are less compensated continue to feel the way about the fact that the system works how the system works. If you're an ARB, you're probably pretty sick of it, especially since we just basically have come out and it's mask off about the fact that ARB is fucked up and bad. And they haven't come up with a system that is better. And I will say, it's not just that ARB is bad or like the process of arbitration is bad, because arbitration is a time-honored union tradition, not just in Major League Baseball, salary arbitration or arbitration over issues. But the team control that leads to ARB is the thing that is severely limiting to players. And there's just like gross issues that are not being addressed. And so you might start spinning a wheel and that wheel might land on the guy that negotiated the last contract. That's what I see like from the outside looking in. I have no opinion, no knowledge, no well-formed thoughts about what should happen or what will happen, really. I'm curious, just like anyone else. And if they replace Tony Clark with a 33-year-old organizer who just organized the minor leaguers, I would find that to be truly fascinating, because that would be in the same way that it's really interesting how a lot of our longest running, most successful unions, like the auto workers, the Teamsters, have recently had an influx of more militant organizer background people leading those unions. It'd be fascinating. It would just be a different dynamic than the one that we have been covering on this show for the last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, this does really feel like, this is not certainly a novel thing to say, but like a kind of huge inflection point for the union right now. And I think it's good they're doing this in the middle of a CBA. You don't have anything else going on right now.
Yeah, you're not like 3 years to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And in this discussion, there's an assumption that this conflict is entirely about like priorities, which also may not be the case, right? There could,
I think it's probably also about relationships.
right?
I
Exactly.
think a lot of guys are like, Harry Marino got us here.
And knows people and knows the tenor is far closer to have
Is speaking for more people than people who are in union leadership ever could speak for.
Right,
because
exactly.
They have a different job.
Was quite recently a baseball player, and so is likely more.
It's amazing how fast that's changed, though, because Tony Clark was the first player to ever run this union, and that was like 9 years ago. That
right,
he
exactly.
became in charge of it.
Yeah, so I think
that was thought of like as that's progressing now.
There could be as much here about like governance and the bureaucracy of the union itself as the like quite literal priorities that they're taking.
I mean, they've hinted about that with like the spending audit,
right?
Which like I don't know what to make of that, because there's always like a spending audit question. There's always like some guys who are just asking questions like, "How's this money being spent?" It's
yes,
like,
exactly.
I'm not really sure. Don't know what to say about that. Don't know enough about it. The final thing I will say, kind of in defense of Bruce Meyer, players didn't want to miss games.
Yeah.
You want a better contract? Miss games.
Yeah.
I mean, like the executive subcommittee all voted no.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not like Meyer wouldn't have gone back and continued to try to fight harder for a better contract. He fought all the way up until the point where the rest of the union kind of let the executive subcommittee down.
Right. The negotiator is not going to say, no, I reject the
It's
idea
not
that
their
the
job.
whole unit
It's not their
wants
job.
this thing. Exactly.
It's their job to say, here's the will of the unit. I will go to the table and I will try to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah.
And everybody on the executive subcommittee, by the way, none of them who are talking about this, none of them who have said are gone on the record about any of this. You haven't heard from Max Scherzer. You haven't heard from, I mean, other than if they've been asked directly and they've said canned lines or whatever, you haven't heard. Francisco Lindor has not sat down for a interview with The Athletic. Like, I said this at the time. This contract is Febreze on a broken system. And it might be like Febreze that gets money in people's pockets, and that's important too. And we got back, and the bottom didn't fall out of the labor market of baseball, and that maybe we consider that a win. But if you are a person like me who believes that these are the only opportunities that we have to actually make structural change to the financial system that we have in baseball, is like work stoppages. And by the way, the owners put the work stoppage in place. The sentiment was already against them, so you didn't have to worry about that. The public was on their side. And they didn't do it. They just backed down. They balked. And that's okay. It's okay if that's what the union wanted, if that's what the rank and file wanted, that's what the democratic process looks like. It does look uncomfortable sometimes. This is uncomfortable. It's not great. It's not a good look per se, but could lead to good outcomes.
Yeah. It is an acknowledgement that like there are limits to what you can win without being willing to blow things up. Like
man,
that's kind of inherent
across a lot of places in a lot of different realms.
Yeah.
Okay, we've been talking for a really long time. I kind of knew this was going to happen. We'd missed a lot. The last thing that happened over the last, this was like yesterday, 2 days ago, but that we have missed. It's a news item before we get to band topics, is that Peter Angelos, owner of the Baltimore Orioles, died at the age of 94. I find his legacy as owner of the Orioles truly fascinating. One of the least conventional owners that we had. Not to say that he was like outspending any other owners, or that he was maybe like better or worse than any other owners, but he made his money in a very different way. He made his money by representing defendants in a class action lawsuit against the city of Baltimore. He made hundreds of millions of dollars that way, immediately parlayed it into buying a sports team. Had moral qualms about the international expansion of Major League Baseball, and kind of for a long time refused to participate in that as an organization in the same way that a lot of other organizations did. Now, some people in retrospect have sort of thought of that as a little bit of like feigned incompetence,
right,
masquerading as moralism. But alas, he was kind of like different from other owners in that respect. And then by the end, his cheaper tendencies wore on fans. And then as he got older, got sick, was unable to run the team, his kids having a power struggle over the team was obviously unique usually they choose the successor, and the successor comes around, and he's Hal. He goes up there and he's like, we have to run the Yankees like a investment bank. Leading to obviously a lot of what has happened over the last couple of years with John Angelos, which is like just pure unadulterated raw stupidity.
Yeah.
But a fascinating owner to think about his legacy, a fascinating owner to talk about. Seemingly, like, again, we always say this whenever like an owner passes away. We said this about Peter Seidler, but like a lot of people feel like it feels like a lot of people within the organization liked working for him. So I guess that's a point in his favor. The final thing, like just process wise, that this does is that it finalizes the sale, the elements of the sale to David Rubenstein. He will now control a majority share of the team, as well as he was already the control person. So functionally, this doesn't really change how the Orioles are going to be run, but on the actual like contract sheet, his name is actually on the top in terms of like the percentage.
The
of the
Angelos
pie
names are getting crossed out right now.
Yeah.
No lame duck session for John, where he can implement his final wills.
Bummer. He was really looking forward to that platform.
Can I just say, I'm gonna miss him.
You're gonna miss Peter Angelos or John Angelos?
John.
Yeah.
Well, I'll miss. I don't feel one way or another about Peter, but I am gonna miss John. I think he was our lovable little guy.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, what if we let him run a baseball team? Wouldn't that be quirky and fun?
I'm just really excited that this gave us an opportunity to talk more about the Magna Carta. So we're going to spend the next 15 minutes now that the sale is really official. We're going to talk about how many more Magna Cartas we can sort of get down at Camden Yards.
Yeah.
Maybe we get a couple, maybe we get a little Emancipation Proclamation. Maybe we get an OG Magna Carta, because you remember this was a copy from 30 years later of the Magna Carta that David Rubenstein owned.
Yeah.
Anybody listening to this right now just thinks that I just contracted a brain disease in the last 30 seconds. But for the people who did listen to that pod, the Forbes 100 Richest People pod, where we talked about Magna Cartas for 30 minutes, people are pumping their fists right now.
Yeah, that's right.
That was some of our best stuff ever.
Real ones know.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to do, at long last, the 2024 Band Top Picks. All right, we're back. I've acquired some Girl Scout cookies to lighten the mood a little bit. I'm only going to give you some Girl Scout cookies if I like your band topics, though.
Okay. So they're like little treats for me.
Yeah, exactly.
You rolled over. Here you go.
Good job, Alex. Here's your gold star. Stevie's very
Stevie has leaned forward.
Actually, in the last 6 weeks, what we did determine that everybody would want was more like kind of ASMR, like the sound of unpacking, unboxing things.
Yeah.
That was like our big revelation in the last 6 weeks. I don't know why Stevie's looking at these cookies as if she could have them. Because she can't. They have chocolate.
Wow, get her ass. You're so stupid, Stevie. You thought you could have those?
A piece of one of these cookies I was eating, they're Thin Mints, by the way.
Yeah.
A piece of one of the cookies I was eating yesterday broke off and fell into my sleeve, into the sleeve of my sweatshirt.
Okay.
And I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And so then Stevie was like sticking her head in my sleeve. And I was like, what are you doing?
She knew.
I realized that there was a piece of the cookie in there. She did know. She's a smart dog. I'm kidding. You can have some cookies if you want them.
I'm okay for now. Thank you, though.
Fine. Don't have the cookies then. At least I just brought them in for nothing. Before we get started.
Room temp Thin Mints? Who are you, bro?
Am I supposed to like put them in the fridge or whatever, or the freezer?
Yeah, bro.
Everybody. There's all these like unwritten rules about candy. Thin Mints have to go in the freezer. Reese's Cups have to go in the freezer. They're better that way. You're a freaking cuck if you don't eat them that way. I'm like, okay, all right, relax. I'm just having the Thin Mints. They taste good. Generally, I think things taste worse in the freezer. You lose some of the flavor because it's so cold.
I agree. I'm fine with refrigerated though. I think it adds a nice little like crunch to it.
Pretty crunchy as it is.
Well, I guess, but it also brings out the mintiness. I think it's kind of like it adds the like icy element.
I can get behind that. I've always felt like. And every time I've tried to explain this to people, they've been like, no, I don't feel that way. I think you're weird. So I'm going to try to do it to the thousands and thousands of people who listen to this podcast. You ever know, like when you chew gum and you go outside and cold air hits your mouth, you taste it more? Does that happen to you?
No, I don't think that way. I think you're weird.
I just want somebody to validate what I'm saying. So like, this is the biggest platform I have other than the big picture, which I'm not going to just derail with this.
It does intensify the like sort of spiciness of the mint, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, with mint, it's definitely like when you walk outside.
Oh, but you're
and
just
chewing
saying
gum,
any
for
type
example.
of gum?
It's like there's a lot of different flavors that it amplifies them. Somebody listening to this will be like, "Yes, sir, you're right."
You're saying you want to you like to decant your gum a little bit. You like to let it aerate.
Yeah, what if I am saying that? Like, what if I am? What are you gonna do? Not host this pod with me anymore? There's some neuroscientist somewhere who's like, here's the reason behind this.
Yeah.
They're not listening to this podcast though.
No, but they know the answer.
They do. We'll find them one day. I would like to recap last year's banned topics really quickly.
Okay.
And then I want you to start. Last year, you banned what ended up being a really easy to understand concept, but the way that you introduced it was very confusing. It took us about 10 minutes to really hone the idea. You banned owners feigning surprise about other teams' payroll.
Mm.
And I think this was in response to the Padres mostly, where there was a lot of anonymous sources going on the record being like, I don't know how they can afford it.
Yeah.
You banned Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, is he worth it discourse? You know?
Yeah.
Like, just talk about the player, don't talk about the suspension, etc. Remember when he was suspended? Remember he was suspended for just like old-fashioned steroids?
No, I actually just remember that.
So wild. And then famously,
I'm actually hearing this for the first time. You're just telling me.
Famously, you made that joke on the pod last year.
No way.
Swear to
Did
God.
you? God damn it.
Swear to God. Time's a flat circle. Famously, you banned rule changes except for the bigger bases.
Mm-hmm.
Important caveat.
Still feel good about that one.
Yeah, I do think that one aged the
I think
best.
it ultimately aged well.
Okay, I banned discussion of the Rays front office just because I was like, everybody's always just trying to give them so much credit. I'm like, can we just talk about the team? Just
I
talk
know.
about the players.
Although you gave them a decent amount of credit last year, if I recall correctly.
Did I?
You kind of went back and forth on being like, Rays cooked. What the fuck are we doing here? And
you know why I did that?
What?
Because I hate the Orioles.
Okay. It's just like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Not even that, but it's just like I didn't know how I didn't know how nice I had it. When people were like giving so much credit out to a team that hadn't even won a playoff game yet, I'm like, okay, can we slow down here?
You're like, all right, at least the Rays are like cooking something.
At least
over there.
exactly. This is like when
They're giving themselves a shot.
This is like when in like European history when you've been battling.
Yeah, I already know it's exactly what this is like.
You've been battling like a dynasty for like thousands of years, and then suddenly like this new clan shows up and is really fucking your shit up.
Yeah, and you're like the old guys weren't so bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Like at least I knew them. At least I could talk with them.
I've changed my geopolitical alliances to be more in favor of the Rays.
You mean it's basically like the Rays are like George Bush. Where you're like, at least that guy was presidential.
And the Orioles are Trump?
I guess.
Or are the Orioles Hillary Clinton? I also banned discourse around how a contract will age. Like long contract, back end of this isn't going to look very good. Don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like 9 years away. And finally, I banned the word analytics without specifying what you mean. You can't just say analytics.
Yeah. I love the specificity of our banned topics,
Yeah. Well, we can't just ban like Rob Manfred.
I know. Well, you're going to love mine this year then.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, kick it off. 2024, banned topics. Last year, we implemented a rule where after you say the topic, you have to say banned. I'd like to sustain that rule.
All right.
That caused Stevie to bark last year. We'll see if it does this year, too.
As her eyes slowly
she is
start to
asleep.
close.
Let's see if you can.
See
She's
if I
been
can-
sleeping for most of this pod, which good or bad sign, not sure.
Right. She's like, wow, same old, same old.
6 weeks off, still doing the same shit.
My band topics are a little more far flung this year.
Okay. I'm reading about all the stuff that the Girl Scout mission includes.
All right. Well, I'm banning Girl Scouts.
STEM, outdoors, life skills, and entrepreneurship.
Banned.
A-Rod would love this.
God, he would.
He would love this.
Can you get a little closer to the mic, please, while you're chewing those?
Mm-hmm.
My first band topic: virtual ballparks / like VR baseball,
Love it.
banned. We really leaned into that bit last year, the like VR, the like virtual ballpark, and like, oh, you can go watch the All-Star game, you can watch the home run derby. I'm not interested anymore. It's not an interesting concept to me, either as far sore tragedy. The bubbles burst.
Unfortunately, I don't think MLB agrees.
Are they scaling it up?
I mean, last year was the first year of it. You think that they're just going to can it?
I
When
hope
have
so.
they given you that impression that they would take feedback and change their mind? Although, if you think back to the beginning of this podcast, they took my feedback of being like, why the fuck don't they have a Samsung TV app?
That's true.
And they made one.
And they did make one. Yes, they read your mind with that one.
Do you think like the programmer who programmed the Samsung TV app on the MLB side is listening to this right now? And it's like, finally, someone's recognized this.
Yes,
finally.
that's right. I did it for you.
The national recognition I deserve.
I hope so. Pour one out for him.
I just know that some people who cash a check from Major League Baseball do listen to this podcast. I know it. It has to be true.
Right. Well, I mean,
Like,
you
if
and I
someone-
listen.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I don't listen.
yeah, exactly. If somebody did a podcast constantly critiquing my employer, I would subscribe.
You'd be curious what they were saying. Right or
Just
wrong?
kidding. Just kidding. I would not. I would never do that. I would not do that. My first band topic of 2024. It's a little guy by the name of Ben Verlander. This episode better be the last time I hear this man's name spoken aloud.
Hell yeah.
No more. It's not even funny anymore. Like, we're years removed from the poor wife Helen thing. Like, that was legitimately funny. Okay, low-hanging fruit now. It's always like something happens with Ohtani. This happened this past week with the betting stuff. And then Ben Verlander did a tweet because he works for DraftKings now or whatever, being like, I'm taking the over on all the Ohtani lines. And it's like, that's insanely insensitive to what's going on. And also like the part of the problem. I'm just not interested in it anymore. We know
It's
he's
just like
Justin
rage
Verlander's
bait,
brother.
yeah.
He's the easiest person in media to dunk on. Like, get more interesting. Dunk on Verducci, dunk on Rosenthal, dunk on Passan, dunk on some of these guys who like have people who actually support them. Because I'm genuinely curious. Like, who is the guy who's like stop
caping for
talking
Ben
about
Verlander?
Ben Verlander that way? It's like we're all just in
He's
agreement.
like, I actually think he's adding a lot to the conversation.
Nobody thinks that.
No one is,
except
yeah.
like TV executives, I guess.
Right, except people signing his checks.
Man, I'm tired of it.
I agree.
Ben
It's like-
Verlander, more like Band Verlander.
Wow.
Got him.
Wow.
Got him. Ben Verlander found dead in the ditch. Got him.
I agree. Co-signed.
I thought about banning other media members too, like in conjunction with this, but none of them rise to the level of something that I legitimately would not want to talk about, or even
Right,
something that we might talk about.
Like Ben
on the show.
Verlander is the only person who we know is not actually going to contribute anything that we will need to discuss on this podcast.
But is also present enough that he might come up.
Exactly.
He's right smack in the middle of that Venn diagram.
Right.
Like, nothing that John Boy ever says will ever be something that we're going to talk about on this podcast. And nothing that we can't commit to not talking about something that Ken Rosenthal writes. By the way, had a couple stinkers in the break.
Yeah.
Couple stinkers from Ken.
Mhm.
Couple misses, Just saying. Everybody's fave bow tie wearing dude, columnist, holding it down. Ben Verlander band.
City Connect jerseys.
Oh, okay.
I just
Great timing. Right before the Mets come out with theirs. Great work by you. Do the A's have a City Connect jersey?
What do you think?
It would be so funny if they rolled out a City Connect jersey this year.
And then we couldn't talk about it.
No, I mean,
Or
it
just
was
period,
Just
if they
period,
did.
because like
Yes.
they're leaving. Like,
Yeah.
we're about to connect to the city. That would be really funny.
It would be funnier if they rolled out a Las Vegas City Connect jersey.
And
this
wore
year.
it in Oakland.
Yes, exactly.
When do you think they're going to turn their replies back on the Twitter account?
Well, you've seen that they like occasionally have accidental. Like the other day, they accidentally tweeted out a highlight and
No, I
left the
haven't seen
replies
that.
on, and then they had to delete the tweet because everyone was like, "Replies back, let's go." I actually,
It's so insane that they just have the replies off.
it is.
That was so beautiful to witness.
This is the times when we wish we could record the video of this podcast. It is
No, it's only my eyes only.
unbelievable that a major league sports team
Go off.
just does not allow fans to reply to their tweets.
Go off.
I like
Broken social contract?
under no circumstances do you ever have to hand it to Dave Cavill, but he has turned his replies back on. He's facing the music.
How are
know?
your burners handling that?
They're going great.
The newfound opportunity to reply to Dave Cavill.
It's doing incredibly well. I'm masquerading as a Siegel account and just dragging him into debates.
Renderings in bio. What did you ban?
I banned City Connect discussions.
Right.
I just they ultimately. I know that I've gone back and forth on them over the last couple years. Sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's cool or whatever. Generally speaking, I have not found that they've ever risen to the level of like, we can have an interesting discussion about this.
Yeah.
Because like they're largely marketing opportunities. They're a way to create a new visual aesthetic that you can sell to fans for $190. And they whiff on most of them.
Speaking of selling things to fans that are whiffs, I'm so happy we didn't have to talk about the uniforms thing.
Oh my God.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Not even worth a ban.
No.
Just something that we
It's
just straight
like,
came,
it's whatever.
went.
I don't
They
care.
haven't solved it yet, probably. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't care. The word fanatics means nothing to me.
It really.
This is
City
good.
Connect
No, this is a good idea, I think, because again, it's a visual thing. It's a subjective thing. Anytime you critique one of the City Connect jerseys, there's always someone who comes out and is like, well, actually, it's representing this thing from the city that you would know if you were from here. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm like, that's okay. If you enjoy it, that's fine.
Exactly. You're getting on the let people enjoy things
I
bandwagon.
am. I'm
2024.
shushing your lips.
I don't see why you can't just let people enjoy things.
So what if they want to bet on the game? What if it brings them joy?
Okay, I'm banning. This is a fine line that we have to walk here, and I'm slightly worried that it will limit the way we can talk about certain things. But
good. Those are the best ban topics.
but I would like to ban acknowledgement of when a team says they want a new stadium. I think we should just
I kind of thought about this as well.
I think we should just like pretend that that's not real. They don't mean that.
Yeah.
They're not saying they're not going to leave. You're not going to leave. Just do it. We're calling their bluff. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to acknowledge it. We're not going to be like, this would be really bad for the city. You know, giving this money to this team. It could go better places.
Yeah.
It really should be used for the people who need it the most. And we just get really bummed out about it. And we're like, this is dumb. This is how they do this. We know. You've been listening to this podcast for a long time. You know how we feel about this. We're just not going to acknowledge when a team is like, we need a new stadium because our stadium doesn't work anymore. It's just not true. And I just don't need to acknowledge the lie anymore. So discussion of a team saying they want a new stadium is banned. Banned.
We haven't been doing that. Stevie is fast asleep right now.
She keeps our egos in check.
I really like that just because there's so much that comes out of ownership that is frankly like nonsense and meant to drive discussion or deceive the public. And most of the time it just doesn't warrant discussion.
No.
It's just not worth engaging with whatever game they're playing.
This was like my salve. This was my solve for like trying to figure out a way to ban the way that we were forced to talk about the A's last year, where we had to like react to everything they said like they were a presidential administration putting policy into place. They were just lying, you know? Like they were just making it up. They were just making it up. It's like we're like teachers who like the kid comes in and clearly did not do the preparation for their speech and they're just up there just
vamping,
freestyling.
Yeah.
We just don't have to give that kid an A or a B or a C. We're just going to give them an incomplete.
We should fail more kids. Sorry, if you're not doing the work.
Do you think everyone should get a trophy?
Great point.
Okay, what is your third and final banned topic? Reactionary conservative era tipping pitches is going to be so
good.
goated.
I feel it coming.
It's going to be such a movie dog.
Yeah. My last band topic.
We worked hard to get here.
We did.
And we're pulling the ladder up behind us. No one after us will ever create a niche, slightly successful podcast about labor and baseball ever again after us. We're the only. Your last banned topic.
My last banned topic will be relatively easy for us to ban.
Okay.
That's the sport of football. It's too much football discussion last year. I felt put a little under pressure, a little under the microscope. You would ask me if I knew who was playing in the Super Bowl. No, I don't know who's playing in the fucking Super Bowl. This is a baseball podcast.
So good.
So I'm sorry. The sport of football banned.
That's fine. That's fine. How far does this
that level of
extend?
scrutiny?
How far does this extend? Can we talk about off the field? Can we talk about owners?
Sure.
we talk about-
yes, but I think we cannot talk about the
Like, it can't be like, yo, did you see who the Jets picked up?
right, exactly. Like,
Can we talk about RFK's presidential run?
oh, that's football because
Aaron Rodgers.
is his VP, which he's not actually. I don't know if you saw, but
I didn't see who he actually picked,
I
but
don't know, whatever.
he was never going to pick Aaron Rodgers. Nothing that you hear about Aaron Rodgers is actually going to happen. Nothing. And it's just like, bet against it, you know? Fade it.
Right, I'm fading Aaron Rodgers this year. Yeah, sure, we can do off but we basically have to, I'm saying we have to apply our tipping pitches ethos to the coverage of football, which
Never
is
talk
not
about the
talk about the
games.
substance.
Okay. That's fine.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Can you
I know that you've-
refrain from grilling me on Jalen Hurts?
I can.
Remember when you were like teaching me lessons about Philly
Philadelphia.
culture?
Yeah, well, I stopped doing that because you're not actually a Phillies fan. So there's no point.
Wow.
Exposed. This summer, we're going to have to do another MLB matchmaker. All that work for nothing.
You don't think I'm rocking a Christian Pache jersey under this sweatshirt right now?
I don't think you are. No. Did you have an A's Christian Pache jersey?
No.
Did they even sell that? Probably
No.
not. Definitely not. Okay. My third and final band topic. This one's going to be controversial.
Best ones always are.
This might divide the Tipping Pitches podcast, similar to how Martin Luther divided the Christian church. I think we should stop talking about Alex Rodriguez.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. Stop. No, we can't stop talking about Alex Rodriguez. You joked before the podcast that you were going to say Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
We can't stop doing that. That's
I
how
know.
people identify
I know,
us,
I know.
You know? Like Bart Simpson, say the line. Make the joke. Can we get A-Rod on the pod this year, do you think? We did our 2024 goals meetings a week ago. No mention of Alex Rodriguez. Why not?
It came up briefly because we talked about how he's writing a book. And so when the book comes out, I think we can get him on his press tour.
One person responded to the tweet, the picture that I posted of the band topics, no fuck, with nothing written underneath it, with the picture of A-Rod's book manuscript on the A-Rod letterhead, which just said book.
Kind of legendary. Did not realize that art was imitating life with that one, did you?
No, I mean, it's just so, he taught me the way.
Right.
You know, like the Mandalorian. This is the way.
This is the way. Do you have a band's topic?
Are you going to
here?
fire up Acolyte? What do you think? I've heard good things.
What is that?
This new Star Wars show. Wow, they've lost you.
God, wow. I'm out.
Oh my God. Disney Plus in shambles. My actual final topic that I'm banning. I would like to stop discussing the toxic wing of Atlanta Braves fandom. I feel like I did a lot of like, here's why this is problematic, serious voice rants last year about Braves fans. Number one, I think everybody kind of knows all of that stuff now at this point. I feel like I've made my point heard. As a fan of a team in their division, I actually think that there's like legitimately like a lot of really bad faith things going on within the fan base, like there are in a lot of fan bases. And I think that the organization exacerbates those things. I think it like draws those characteristics out intentionally in really shitty ways. But I think that everybody listening to this podcast knows that that's the way that I feel about this point. And I feel like it's gone so far that it's like people who might actually be Braves fans and feel that way similarly are just like having that said to them all the time. And I don't know that there's that much more to add. And I feel like it really crested last year with, you know, continued discourse around the chop, as well as like their second straight disappointing exit and the way that the fans handled that. The Orlando Arcia Jake situation, the fans were and the media members were really shitty during that. I'm kind of like, I'm over it, you know? I'm not letting the Braves off the hook.
Right. You're actually doing this to spend more time investigating them for crimes against humanity.
I'm just saying what's going on with the foundation, you know?
Why is everybody my favorite just asking questions that you do?
1%? Everyone 1%? Every single person just believes in the mission.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like, yeah, sure. I think not enough people are asking questions.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did consider banning the Braves, just broadly speaking.
Yeah.
No Braves talk. But, you know, they're probably going to be like the best team in baseball. Like, they're probably going to go to the World Series. Like, that'd be hard. Tricky. So, you know, like, haughty rants about how the Braves fans are toxic is banned. Banned. How do you feel?
I feel good. I think this was they really ran the gamut this year.
The hardest one will be, I think, when a team says that they want a new stadium, because it's just so low hanging fruit to be like they're fraudulent for this.
So if a team says they want to move, does that count as wanting a new stadium?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So if the San Francisco Giants came out and said, we're moving to Montreal.
No.
We're not touching it.
I don't think so.
All right.
I mean, unless you want to.
I mean, it's not like anything would happen for like 7 years anyway. So like.
They're not going to do it. They're just not. You know, they're not. Teams don't move. All right. I'm not even convinced that the A's are going to move.
I know.
And they've submitted like 88 pieces of legislation about how they're going to move. They're not going to move. All right. They're not going to do it. They're going to stay in Oakland. Mark my words right now.
All right. Here you go.
I'm putting my foot down. They're staying in Oakland. Congratulations to you.
Wow, they're back. We're back. I can start wearing A's merch again.
You can, because they're not going to Vegas. That's not real. Okay. It's not real. Okay? It's not happening. John Fisher, name me one thing that he's followed through on in his life. Name it.
Besides cutting down trees.
I don't even know that was like his mission.
I know.
I think that was just like a thing that happened to him. Besides being the son that took over the family's assets, I don't know. Did he even want to do that? Doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like he wants to be doing this.
Is John Fisher actually a sympathetic character in all of this? Is this a position that has been forced upon him?
Are you telling me that you wouldn't watch Succession about John Fisher?
Oh, I'm not saying that at all.
Exactly.
All right, book it.
I've tried. I'm going to write that script one day. I'll leave all this behind and become a screenwriter. It'll be less stressful for me. The 6-week breaks that are built in are just because I don't have a job.
Bobby, we've reached the end of the ban topics, but
yeah, we have.
I do feel like there might be one more we need to ban.
Okay.
This might be controversial.
How many times can we get away with doing the bit where we're like, this could be controversial and we might ban it?
But this one actually might be.
Okay.
I want to ban the all gift draft.
I forgot that I said that I was going to do that joke.
I know. That's why I got you.
Thank you. Okay. You know, it's a good joke, but we actually are not doing the all gift draft this year. In discussing how we wanted to preview this season, we obviously wanted to bring back the banned topics because we had a lot of fun doing it last year, and it paid dividends throughout the year. We have 2 more interesting ideas that we came up with in our preseason brainstorm together that I can't wait for you guys to hear. Those will be the next 2 weeks. And we were like kind of reassessing, like, does the all gift draft still work? And we know people get excited for it. It's really fun to talk to people about players that we're excited for in the upcoming year. The issue is like the same as it always has been, talking about a very visual thing in an audio medium, as well as it's a lot of work to then not ever come back to it for the rest of the season. So instead, we will be executing a season preview idea hilariously a week from now, which is like 3 days after the season starts. Right, yeah. But, you know, this is how it is. That we will be able to refer back to throughout the year more easily. And that will have some level of audience participation, which is exciting. So more on that next week. More on it. The whole of it next week. And until then, as a little bit of housekeeping here at the end of this episode, this return episode, I wanted to reiterate again. I feel really appreciative of everybody's patience and support for the time that we took away from the show so that we could refocus and reset and just talk to each other about how we wanted to do the show this year, what we were hoping for from the show this year, how we were feeling a little bit run down from doing it for 6.5 straight years without a break from it. And the words of encouragement that people shared about how they supported that decision to do that. And we will probably be building in like calendar breaks to the show throughout the rest of more often throughout the next 6 years, like we did not through the last 6 years, like maybe when the off season rolls around, et cetera, et cetera. But we will be as transparent as possible in communicating those and the reasons why, et cetera, et cetera. And in addition, we will be reactivating for people who are patrons. We will be reactivating the Patreon. It should appear as reactivated now as you're listening to this. And that means that we will go back to providing additional Patreon episodes every 2 weeks throughout the season. Many of them throughout the season, if there is not a separate idea that we come up with, many of them will just function, as we said, during the season as full 3 up, 3 down episodes. Those will be, 30 to 45 minutes, which means 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm really looking forward to that because I love doing that segment. I love talking about things that we don't get a chance to talk about on the main feed episodes and just diving a little bit deeper and being a little bit looser. Thank you to everybody who stuck around on that too. I mean, I know we paused the Patreon for a couple months, but it really it means a lot that like people weren't upset by that or people were accepting of that. And I just wanted to reiterate how committed we are to upholding those things and to continuing to make the show that we want, as well as the show that you guys appreciate, both here on the main feed as well as on the Patreon. And, a break like this was designed to allow us to be able to refocus on the things that would let us do that. So that was a whole lot of words for basically just like we're back to normal.
And frankly, I just want to add a little context.
We were in a 6-week long acquisition discussion with A-Rod Corp, and it did fall through. That's actually why we took so much time away from the show.
Wait, you saw that his like financing for the Timberwolves is like fell through, and he had to go and find like a different like someone who was going to pay lend $300 million or whatever, like
right to complete the sale of the Timberwolves.
So like it's still
and
up
the
in
links.
Air?
Nah, he's got it.
I know.
He's
got it.
Yeah, he's got it.
No, I just
he's not the money guy. He's the face. What a face that is.
The break was largely precipitated by the fact that Manfred said he's stepping down, and we said the clock is ticking. We need to figure out how we're going to cover this over the next 5 years because he's not leaving until like 2029 or whatever.
I know. I considered banning discussion of his legacy, but then I remembered that we like came up with a podcast idea that was like, we're gonna do like
it's fine. We could have done it anyway. We still have 5 years to talk about his legacy.
I continue to think that Rob should come on the show. And now what's he have to lose?
Right.
He's already stepping down.
You want to talk lame duck?
If Rob said that he would come on the podcast in 2029, would you then commit to continuing the show till at least 2029?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know that I would not commit to continuing the show until 2029 anyways.
I mean, I'd love to continue the show till 2029, but I don't know that I would commit to it now.
You're saying you're not trying to sign a long-term contract yet.
Exercise
you don't
my
feel like getting locked in.
Option.
You want to test the market a little bit.
Who knows? We might not have Major League Baseball in 5 years. What would we talk about then?
God
Just
willing.
all the other stuff that we talk about.
Football.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to be banned 5 years from now. That's for sure. Okay, thank you everybody for listening. Like I said, next couple of weeks are going to be, I don't know, like preview adjacent content, but it's not really going to be like who's going to win the AL Central. You know,
if you've been listening, like you know what you're going to get.
I'm really excited for the next couple episodes,
Yeah,
so I
me
hope
too.
everybody else is too. And I'm excited. I'm happy to be back. So thanks everybody for listening, and thanks everybody for their patience, and we will be back next week.
As long as we're feel good, if we just lay Carlos Rodriguez. Tipping pitches.
Tipping pitches.
This is the one that I love the most.
Tipping pitches.
So we'll see you next week. See ya!